It's time now for Edmund O'Brien and...
Johnny Dollar.
This is Mrs. Case, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Case. Thank you for calling back.
Of course. Do I understand that my husband's insurance company sent you to talk to me?
That's right, Mrs. Case.
But who reported my husband's disappearance to them?
They have to keep their eyes open, especially with a holder of a policy the size of your husband's.
You aren't keeping things from me, are you? Nothing has happened that I don't know about.
I'd have no reason to hold anything back, Mrs. Case.
Please tell me the truth. He hasn't been found hurt or anything?
No, he hasn't been found yet. But I'd like to talk to you to find out what I can do.
Edmund O'Brien in a transcribed adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Tri-State Insurance Group, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Leland case matter. Expense account item 1, $24.80 transportation from Hartford to New York City. I phoned Mrs. Leland Case as soon as I got in, and when she returned the call, I made arrangements to meet her at her... I phoned Mrs. Leland Case as soon as I got in, and when she returned the call, I made arrangements to meet her at her apartment. But before I went over, I checked in with Missing Persons Bureau to get what background they had.
Mr. Dollar?
That's right.
I'm Sergeant Dilko. Sorry to keep you waiting, but I was busy on another file. You're interested in one on Leland Case?
That's the man, and I'd like to start from scratch. All I know about him is that he carries too much insurance to lead a peaceful life. That isn't a generality.
Oh, what is it?
I wondered if you knew. He was married before, and according to the scandal sheets, he thought his first wife tried to kill him. Something about sleeping pills and a fire, but there was no proof, so all he could do was make a public statement and divorce her.
Well, no, we didn't know that. When did this happen?
About 5 years ago.
Where is his first wife?
I don't know, but I'll try to find out.
Let us know. Here's what we have. Age 47, description, etc. Occupation, owner and manager of a statewide line of grocery stores known as Case Incorporated. Reported missing by Mrs. Leland Case day before yesterday. She said he'd been missing 2 days and knew of no reason why he should leave of his own volition. Knew of no enemies or any reason for suicide. I've got 50 more just like it.
I suppose you have. Did he say he was going anyplace the last time Mrs. Case saw him?
Not that she remembers. He kissed her goodbye at 10:30 in the morning and failed to pick her up at 7 that night to go to dinner at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Herbert Bennett.
There isn't any luggage or missing clothes.
Not unless he had some no one knew about at his office where he maintained a bachelor apartment.
Oh, there's that.
Yeah. We haven't really gotten to work on him yet. We've got circulars and so on out on him, and in a day or so we'll be able to spare a man or two for personal work. This has been a busy year for us.
I wonder how that works, how 1 year can be worse than another.
I'm not sure. I think it's the general condition of the world myself. That is, for the ones who do just drop out of sight. You know, people will put up with a lot of boredom and unhappiness during normal times. But when there's uneasiness and unrest, their sense of values change. Their sense of moral responsibility. They say, why put up with this life along with everything else? Let's have a fling. More divorces this year and more marriages.
Everybody running to take a big jump someplace, huh?
The whole world.
Yeah, I guess that's right. What about his current wife? What's she like?
I think she's a girl it would take a long time to know. She's a lot younger. No more than 26 or 7. So the obvious reaction is to doubt her sincerity about a rich, older husband. She's darn good looking and thinks she could tell a lot of men anything and they'd believe her.
It wouldn't interfere with your procedure if I talked to her?
No, not at all. The more work I can get you to do, the better.
Oh, okay, Sergeant. Thanks for the help. I'll see what she has to say. When I was admitted to the case apartment, I understood what Sergeant Dolko meant. She was beautiful, and her outstanding feature was part of her personality, too. A pair of hazel eyes whose candid stare never left yours while you were talking to her. It was almost dark when I got there, and she led me to an end of the living room where a big window looked out at the lights that were snapping on all over Manhattan.
I know I should appreciate what the insurance company is doing, Mr. Dollar, but sometimes I'm almost afraid of what will come to light.
What do you mean, Mrs. Case?
Leland's reasons for wanting to go away. I reported him missing on an impulse, and I wish I hadn't. Not for a while, at least.
Then you aren't worried about him?
I should have given him more time to explain it, to write or phone. Maybe there's a very logical explanation. But I'm mostly sorry because of the stories in the newspapers.
I didn't read them.
They make our life sound so sordid. Just because he's been married before and because he was called a playboy when he was younger. Ours has been a very normal and happy marriage. Not at all what they made it seem.
You must have been worried about him when you went to the police.
Yes, I was. But I'm inclined to let my imagination get hold of me.
Imagination about what?
About his being in an accident or being taken ill or something like that. And when 2 days passed, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I called the police.
Had you made any other inquiries? Called anyone else?
Yes, I called our lawyer the next day.
The day after he didn't meet you for dinner?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
He told me he didn't have any idea why Leland should do a thing like that, but he said not to worry. Then when another day passed, I called him again, and he said the same thing. Not to worry, that he was sure everything was all right.
What's his name, this lawyer?
Paul Frater.
How well do you know him, personally, I mean?
Oh, hardly at all. He's been here at the department a few times for parties, and I've talked to him on the phone, but that's all.
What about your husband's other business associates? Did you know any of them?
No, not well. I've only been married to Leland for a little over 2 years. And he's always said that he wanted our life separated from his business life.
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean. You wonder if Mr. Frater and the others would keep things from me if Leland wanted them to.
Do you think they would?
Yes, I do. I think Mr. Frater was. He kept telling me not to go to the police and that everything was all right. But then when I'd ask him how he knew, he wouldn't say.
What did he say?
That the publicity wouldn't be good. I did, anyway, because I felt that I couldn't believe anybody.
I have an idea you turned to the police in anger, Mrs. Case.
I told you I was sorry that I did.
You also told me that you were almost afraid of what might come to light. Was there trouble between you and your husband?
Not that I know of. I mean, I love my husband, and if his feelings toward me changed, I wasn't aware of it.
Yet you went to the police because you were angry.
No. I was worried and confused. I didn't know what to do. Yes, I was angry because of the way Mr. Frater talked to me. I thought he was lying to me. But if I hadn't talked to him, I would have gone to the police anyway. I think any wife would.
Yeah?
Oh, I don't know what I thought. I wish I hadn't. And if there were a way to stop it, I would.
Do you really want it stopped?
No. He's been gone for 5 days, and I want to know where he is. I have a right to, haven't I?
Sure.
You think I'm cheap and mercenary, don't you? But I married him for his money, and I want to hang on to him.
I didn't say that, Mrs. Case.
You don't have to. Everybody thinks that. Maybe even Leland sometimes. Because I'm young and because of the way I look. I can tell by the way his men friends act around me and the way their wives look at me. Nobody believes I love him. And I wish I didn't. I wish I could turn into what people think I am.
Well, I'll either see you again or I'll phone you tomorrow after I talk to Paul Frater.
I'm sorry I had to keep you waiting.
Oh, it's all right, Mr. Frater.
I seem to have lost an hour this morning that I can't catch. Mr. Dollar, wasn't it?
That's right.
From Tri-State Insurance. Sit down.
Thanks.
How in the world did your company get caught up in this farce?
I think they have informers in the Bureau of Missing Persons.
Missing persons. Rot. As if it isn't bad enough to have a suspicious, grasping wife dogging your every step, now the insurance company is tagging along.
Well, that's the picture so far. You know where Mr. Case is?
No. But if I did, I wouldn't tell you. All of us. All of his friends have been after him to get away from everything here in the city and take a complete rest.
That's what you think he's doing.
Of course it is. And you'd be doing the poor chap a favor if you'd leave him alone.
His wife said that she phoned you and asked if you knew where he was, Mr. Frater. She didn't say that you told her anything about arrest.
I didn't tell her because she's one of the things he's getting away from. When I do tell her the truth, it'll be in the form of divorce papers.
She didn't mention any divorce either. She said they were happy.
Yes, she would. The word happiness is just about the most indeterminate word you'll ever find if you take the trouble to analyze it. Ask 10 people what is necessary to the state of happiness, and you'll get 10 answers. In short, she may have been happy, but he wasn't.
I take it you don't like her.
I don't like leeches. Throughout his life, Leland Case has been the object of scheming women. When he was young, there were scheming mothers, and from then on, the daughters, without prompting. He married the first time against our advice, and it ended in near tragedy. Then this brainless doll stalked him down, and he did it again. We told him from the beginning that she was a huntress. Well, it appears that he's finally come to his senses.
Uh-huh. Who are the we you speak of?
His friends, his business associates.
And, though it's none of my business, do you base your thinking on the theory that the girl is too beautiful to be good, or is there something definite?
How long have you known her, Mr. Dollar?
I met her yesterday.
Then you'll admit that we know her better. She's a cheap beauty contest type from upstate with a high school education.
Okay. What else is he resting from?
Work. He's been completely exhausted mentally for the past 8 months. He had to stop or he'd have collapsed. He's no figurehead, you know. He really heads that corporation. He carries more responsibility than a single mind is equipped to carry.
Where would he go then, Mr. Frater? You must have an idea of Florida, the Caribbean, out west someplace. Where?
I really have no idea, Mr. Dollar. I really don't.
It must be quite a distance, or he would have read about his disappearance and at least phoned.
Yes, that's true. Possibly even Europe.
Well, the police are covering all the steamer and airlines.
That stupid, spiteful woman, the police. Is there no way to stop this idiocy?
If you as his lawyer don't know, and I don't. As long as his wife says he's missing, he is. I talked with more of Leland Case's friends and advisors that day, and their statements were pretty much the same as Paul Frater's. I followed Case's last known movements from his office to his club, where he'd arrived at 5 p.m. for a steam bath. He'd been seen leaving there an hour or so later, and there the trail ended. The witness couldn't remember whether he'd been carrying anything like an overnight bag, and nobody knew how much money he'd had with him. It was hard to tell how much nationwide publicity the disappearance was getting, but in New York and the neighboring states, the papers carried the story in every edition. But that day and most of the next passed before anything developed. I was just leaving my hotel room for dinner when the phone rang. It was Mrs. Leland Case calling to say she had to see me in her apartment as soon as possible.
I had to call you. I wasn't supposed to, but I didn't know what to do.
Sit down.
I wasn't supposed to talk to anybody, but I had to. I couldn't stand it.
Sit down. Now, come on, sit down. Try to make sense. All right. What happened?
A man phoned me. Leland's alive, but they're holding him. I've got to give him some money.
Now, wait a minute. When did this call come in?
Before I phoned you, about 5 minutes, I think. I don't know how long before.
Slow down now. What did he say, exactly?
He said... He told me Leland was alive and all right. He said he'd be safe if I turned $10,000 over to them. They'd let him go then. But if I talked to the police, he'd be killed.
How did you answer him?
Oh, I hardly remember. I went all to pieces. I just said, yes, I'd do anything. He wanted to know how fast I could get the money, and I said I didn't know. And then he said if it wasn't by noon tomorrow, to forget it. I can get it. There are some things in the safety deposit box.
Wait a minute.
And there's quite a bit in the checking account.
Wait a minute. Did he tell you where you were going to hand over the money?
No. Oh, he said someone would call me again.
When?
Tomorrow morning, 11:30, he said.
All right, we have some time then. We'll try and figure out what we're going to do. Before I left her that night, I felt I had convinced Mrs. Case on a few salient points. For one, that we'd be working at cross purposes with the police if we tried to make the contact without them and therefore be hand in hand with the criminals. For another, that if she were watched, as she probably would be, and acted as though she were raising the ransom, I could line up the police without any suspicion being cast on her. And finally, that by the record, kidnappers who received their extortion money according to their... Kidnappers who receive their extortion money according to their exact demands are the first ones to kill the kidnapped victim, since by that time he is the only evidence against them. I alerted Sergeant Dulco that night, and the next morning, while Mrs. Case was out getting what she could of the $10,000, I alerted Sergeant Dulco that night, and the next morning, while Mrs. Case was out getting what she could of the $10,000, I went to the apartment and waited for her. I was standing next to her at 11:30 when the phone rang. Go ahead, I'll stand here. Go ahead, I'll stand here. Hold the receiver away from you.
Take it right to line 15 in.
I alerted Sergeant Dulco that night, and the next morning... And the next morning, while Mrs. Case was out getting what she could of the $10,000, I went to the apartment and waited for her. I was standing next to her at 11:30 when the phone rang. Go ahead. I'll stand here. Hold the receiver away from your ear. I want to get what I can.
All right. I'm so scared.
Go ahead. Don't try to be anything else.
Hello?
It's 11:30. This is about your husband again. Did you raise the money?
Not all of it, but it's over $8,000.
We said 10. What about the rest?
I couldn't do what you wanted me to be careful, and I couldn't get the rest without answering questions. You didn't give me much time.
How much is it?
I can give you $8,600.
There's some way you can make up the difference?
It's such a little bit more. I could sell some of my things if you'll give me more time.
How much time?
It would take another day.
That's too long. We want to get out of this part of the country, so we'll give you a break. You get your man back.
How is he? Is he all right?
He's okay, and he'll stay that way. As long as you do what we say.
I will. What do you want me to do?
Okay. I'll tell you, and we'll get this over with right now. You know where they're fixing up that church on Park Avenue?
Yes. Yes, I know where you mean.
Well, there's a bus stop right there. You be there at 10 to 12 on a dot and have the money inside a newspaper that's folded up. You got that?
Yes.
It'll only be a few minutes, and somebody will meet you. We know you because we've been following you all morning. You got the paper rolled up like you're through reading it, see?
Yes.
And this person will come up and say, are you through with that paper, lady? I want to find out who won the game. Got that?
Yes, I'll remember.
You just give him the paper and walk away. You got that?
Yes. And my husband, when will you let him go?
Just as soon as we get back to where he's at and count the money.
All right. There's nothing else I can do.
That's right. And there's one last thing. Your phone's going to start ringing right after you hang up. Let it ring. It's going to be me, so you won't call out. I want you in front of your building in 3 minutes, so you don't stop the phone. You'll be followed from then on. Now, let's get started so you get your man back, huh?
Well, he hung up.
Yeah, you too.
Did you hear all he said?
Yeah, enough of it. They threw us a curve. It's not usually as simple as this. I won't have time to call the police in.
What's going to happen?
I'll do what I can. Get started now. You've only got a few minutes. I'll leave the building by the other entrance and go up Lexington. Come on.
You'll be there.
I'll try to be by the time you get there. Here's a newspaper. If you can stall a little, do it, but don't be late. When you get there, don't look for me.
I won't.
It's stupid pulling a wide-open daylight contact like this. So stupid it's smart. By the time I'd elbowed and pushed and run my way to the church corner, I was so winded I thought everybody on the street could hear me breathing. But I was there a little over a minute before I saw her picking her way through the crowd, face ashen gray and the folded newspaper held as though it were something alive and dangerous. When she stopped, I moved over as close to her as I dared, and I listened for the words she was waiting for. And finally, out of shoppers' chatter of Macy's and Gimbel's and so on, they came.
You through that paper, lady? I want to find out who won the game.
What? Oh, yes. Yes, here.
Hey, wait a minute.
Huh? What do you want?
Let go! Let go! Let me go! Come
Haven't talked to him yet, but I've got 2 cars out checking the address he gave the booking sergeant.
What name did he give?
Lamson, Eugene L. We haven't checked that out either.
There must be at least 2 more to do all the talk. There must be at least 2 more to do all the tailing and covering he talked about on the phone.
Well, we'll get a call from the radio cars. Oh, here. He's in here. Well, you don't look like you're going to enjoy a steak for a while, do you?
I can wait.
For a long time on a federal rap?
You think so, but I ain't worried.
Where is Leland Case?
I got news for you. I don't know where he is.
Is he alive?
I don't know that either. I read about him in the paper and figured I could nick the wife before they found him.
Sure.
You don't like that? That's all you got of me, and that's all you're going to get.
I wouldn't count on that. Use your head, Lamson. You know how high kidnapping comes. I've known people to get a break if they cooperate.
I don't know nothing about a kidnapping. I'm telling you straight.
You mean he's dead?
I mean what I said. I don't know nothing about it.
Who was in it with you?
Nobody was in nothing with me. I did it alone.
And you know where he is?
I don't know where he is. I tell you, I read about it and figured I'd try to cash in. I ain't fool enough to kidnap nobody.
I don't know what you're trying to pull, Lamson. It's a little late to play stupid.
You told the arresting officer that all you did was ask a lady if she was through with her paper. Why didn't you stick with that story?
I knew I couldn't make it whole.
Then let's have the rest of it. Who contacted Mrs. Case yesterday?
I did.
Who followed her this morning?
I did. I read about her husband and cut her picture out of the paper, went over by her place and stuck around till I saw her. And yesterday I called her on the phone and told her she could get her man back.
Where is he, Lamson?
I don't know. I just told her that to see if it would work. Almost did.
Drop it, Lamson. You phoned her this morning at 11:30. I was there.
Sure I did.
Who followed her from her apartment building to that Park Avenue corner?
I tell you, I did all of that. But I don't know nothing about no kidnapping.
Who stood by the telephone connected to the cases to keep it busy?
Nobody did. I phoned her from just on a block this morning, from a booth. And when I told her I was going to call back and for her to leave it ring, I just left the receiver hanging and went out to follow her.
You know, a lot of you guys have got the idea that if you take a story like this and stick with it and swear to it and repeat it, that there isn't anything anybody can do to break it down.
Yeah. You can't break this one down because there ain't no other. I don't know nothing about this guy but what I read in the paper.
We'll just let you soak for a while, Lamson. The FBI is on their way over. I understand they're pretty good with stubborn guys like you.
I'm telling you, I don't care who comes. That's a straight story, and nobody can make me say nothing else. It was just an idea I had. I got it after I read about it in the paper that this guy
That's enough, Lamson. We'll get back to you. You work on your story while you wait for it.
I don't have to work on it. It's true.
You had enough, Dollar?
Too much,
It may sound crazy. Maybe I am, but it's the truth. I just figured it might work, and it almost did. I had the money right in my hand.
I think it was then that we began to feel that when and if we found Case, we'd find him dead. I don't know about the sergeant, but I began to feel responsible, as though he might have been killed because we'd picked up Lamson and the accomplices he wouldn't name had known that things had gone wrong. We waited in Dolko's office for the report from the radio cars investigating Lamson's address. When we got it, the picture was as blank as before. He'd moved into the place 2 weeks before, and nobody that was questioned knew where he'd come or...
Take around the carpet.
I think it was then that we began to feel that when and if we found Case, we'd find him dead. I don't know about the sergeant, but I began to feel responsible, as though he might have been killed because we'd picked up Lamson and the accomplices he wouldn't name had known that things had gone wrong. We waited in Dolko's office for the report from the radio cars investigating Lamson's address. When we got it, the picture was as blank as before. He'd moved into the place 2 weeks before, and nobody that was questioned knew where he'd come from or anything about him. In the meantime, the experts had gone to work on him, and by 10 that night when I left for my hotel, he still hadn't changed his story. That's the way the day ended. Johnny Dollar.
Sergeant Dolko.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Sergeant. Anything new?
There was a message on my desk when I got here to call a hospital up near White Plains.
Huh?
I talked to a doctor who says there's a patient up there that answers Case's description.
What?
It seems to be a semi-religious place of some kind in the country, sort of removed from reality. This man was brought there by somebody who found him wandering on the road with his clothes torn off and in pretty bad shape from beating. He gave his name as White.
Huh. I don't get it. You going to follow it up?
Yeah, I'm asking permission of the local authorities to come up, and I wondered if you'd like to go with me.
What about Lamson?
He's asleep. So's everybody that questioned him. They worked all night without getting him to change a word.
All right, Sergeant. Let's go to White Plains, then. You want me to cab over, or will you pick me up? The hospital, it seemed, practiced really basic charity. Nobody who came or was brought to the door was turned away. According to the doctor, the patient called White was recovering nicely from his physical symptoms, but his mental condition was such that he refused to talk to anyone, refused to do anything but lie in his bed and stare at the ceiling. We'd come armed with photographs of Leland Case, so we knew that's who he was the moment we walked into his room.
Well, hello, Mr. Case. I wish you'd have let people know where you were. You've caused everybody a lot of worry.
What name did you call me?
Case. Leland Case, isn't that your name?
I don't know. I don't know who I am.
I think we do, Mr. Case.
Leland Case. That's not a very nice name. Why did you come here?
We've been looking for you. You've been missing for over a week. My name is Dilko, and this is Mr. Dollar.
I'm glad we found you, Mr. Case.
Leland Case. That name doesn't mean anything to me.
We have some photographs here. See if you recognize that.
Mm-hmm. They're of me. They're of someone who looks very much like me. I have no memory of anything before I was on a train that I left in the city near here.
White Plains?
Oh, yes. I called myself Mr. White because I remembered that.
You don't remember getting on the train?
No, I remember getting off late at night and wondering why I had come and where I should go. I remember walking down some railroad tracks because it seemed so good to be in the country at night. And then these men attacked me, and I believe they took everything I had, if I had anything. And someone brought me here. Who is Leland Case?
You're a pretty successful man in the state of New York. You have money and a big, thriving business. You have a wife.
A wife?
Yes, the girl in one of the pictures. This one.
This girl is my wife.
Yes, and you also had a doctor who told you that if you didn't stop working so hard, you'd have a mental breakdown.
Well, this is awfully confusing to hear you tell me that this stranger, that I am this Leland Case, this is no joke, is it? Are you sure that's who I am?
Yeah, we're sure. As soon as you feel strong enough to go back to New York with us, you can talk to people who know you. Your wife, for one.
My wife?
Does the name Paul Frater mean anything to you? He's a lawyer.
Paul Fraser. No, it doesn't mean anything to me. The doctor tells me I've recovered from my injuries. I wonder when he would let me go.
He told us that if you felt like it, you could leave today. It would be good for you.
Well, then, if my clothes are wearable, I think I'd like to try and get up.
All the way back to New York, he asked questions about the Leland case. All the way back to New York, he asked questions about the Leland case he'd forgotten. When we got there, it was early evening, and by arrangement with Paul Frater... Paul Frater was waiting with Mrs. Case at the apartment. There were a few moments of strained silence while he looked at them with no show of recognition.
And you tell me that this is my wife.
Leland, darling.
And Mr. Fraser.
Why, I'm your attorney. You and I have been like father and son for years.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Fraser.
You don't remember?
I'm afraid I don't.
Leland, darling, I'll take care of you. I'll make you remember.
What about the business? That'll snap him back.
These gentlemen have told me about the business, this huge, complicated enterprise. Well, I can't believe that I, no matter what my name is, ever controlled anything as large as that.
Well, you did, Leland. You're a genius in organization.
A genius? Well, that sounds awfully dull.
Leland, the company needs you.
Mr. and Mrs. Case and Mr. Frater, I think the problem from here on is up to you. Sergeant Dulco and I are only in the way now.
Well, we want to thank you for all that you've done.
We're glad that it's turning out this way. Goodbye, all of you.
Goodbye. And thank you.
Mr. Dollar. Thank you.
Just so long as Mr. Case will be all right now.
I think I will, Mr. Dollar. Yes, I really think I will.
I couldn't tell because the light wasn't too good, but I'm almost sure that Leland Case winked at me. If he did, it means that his memory is no longer lost, but just stashed away for the day he wants it. And I have an idea that it won't be the company that's there when he decides to find it. But as I say, the light was bad, and I'm not sure. Expense account item 2, same as item 1. Item 3, miscellaneous, $446.53. Expense account total, $496.13. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
This is Dan Cubberly inviting you to join us next week at this time when Edmund O'Brien returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
You've been listening to the OTR Gold Network. Find more classic radio at otrgold.com.